The United Arab Emirates has suspended a multi-billion-dollar deal to buy US-made F-35 fighter jets, in a sign of Abu Dhabi's growing frustration with Washington's attempts to limit Chinese technology sales to the oil-rich Gulf state. The UAE has informed the US that it will suspend discussions to acquire the F-35, technical requirements, sovereign operational restrictions, and cost/benefit analysis led to the reassessment. The UAE and US were working toward an understanding that would address mutual defense security conditions for the acquisition, the official added. The US remains the UAE preferred provider for advanced defense requirements, and discussions for the F-35 may be reopened in the future. The US State Department said the White House remained committed to the deal, which was seen as a cornerstone of an August 2020 agreement to normalize diplomatic relations between the UAE and Israel. The sale, which would involve the most advanced US weaponry ever transferred to an Arab state, has been on a collision course since then, with US politicians raising concerns about the deal. On Tuesday, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby also said that the US was willing to work with the UAE to address both countries' concerns. The suspension of the landmark deal comes a day after Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett met the UAE de facto leader, Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, in the UAE capital. It was the first official visit by an Israeli leader to the Gulf state. The F-35 is our crown jewel of the United States, of our Air Force, and so we need to be able to protect the technology security for all of our partners, U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Regional Security Mira Risnick told CNN Becky Anderson last week, responding to a question about whether the UAE would have to choose between Huawei and the F-35s. But UAE officials have been skeptical about U.S. claims about the potential security breach and have expressed anxiety about getting caught up in a new Cold War between a top trading partner and its main strategic ally. What we are worried about is this fine line between acute competition between China and the U.S. and a new Cold War, Anwar Gargash, diplomatic advisor to the UAE leadership. In those remarks, Gargash also confirmed reports that the UAE had shuttered a Chinese facility over U.S. suspicions that it was being used for military purposes. Despite the UAE disagreeing with the U.S. characterization of the site, the UAE's view was that these certain facilities in no way could be construed as military facilities, said Gargash. However, U.S. had its concerns, and we took these American concerns into consideration and stopped the work on these facilities, but our position remains the same, that these facilities were not really military facilities, he added. A military delegation from the UAE is scheduled to visit the Pentagon tomorrow, according to Kirby, the Pentagon press secretary. Though the meeting wasn't supposed to be about the sale of F-35s, it will almost certainly come up, he said. The meeting wasn't designed to talk about a military sale, he said. It was designed to talk about the broad scope of our defense relationship with the UAE. But I would anticipate that this would be something that we would take advantage of the opportunity to talk with them about their concerns, as well as sharing our concerns about the sale.